Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to our webinar. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. So hang in there. We're just connecting up with Ron Price in the States. So maybe 2 or 3 more minutes. In the meantime, you might populate the chat box. So type in your name and where you're from so I know who we have attending. And we'll be with you in just 2 minutes. Okay, Cronin, David, Aidan, Frank, Dave, yeah, great. Okay, we're getting a good attendance here. Great, guys. We'll be starting in just a minute now. Okay, we're ready to go live. So, Ron, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Great. Video there, so that everybody can see you. Great. Hi, Ron. Good to see you. Good to be talking.
Good to be with you, and I sure appreciate everybody attending our webinar today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ron. Okay, so I suppose before we start, maybe I'll just position Ron and position the webinar in general. Over the last 20 years or so, I've worked with hundreds of companies, and I've had a few insights, not too many, but a few. And one insight in particular that I've had is that we often talk about Verne Harnish and people, strategy, execution, and cash, the 4 focuses of management. And we always say that people comes first. And for sure, in my experience, people come first. Of the 4 things you have to focus your attention on, people is number 1. But I always remember my old chairman from when I used to run an investment company. He used to say to me, "Porrick, I've seen the enemy, and it is us." And he recognized at a very early age, I think, that we're the problem. If people come first, then the leadership of people comes first within that people category. And so that each and every one of us need to recognize that the single most important thing we can do in an organization is, as leaders, lead. So without any great further ado, I'm going to introduce Ron, and I'm going to read, you bear with me, I'm going to read a little bit here about him because there's some interesting things to say about him. Ron's the president and founder of Price Associates, a global leadership performance firm. He's a noted expert on human behavior and how it translates into company culture, individual and indeed business performance. He's travelled over 2 million miles, I want to read this, and given over 1,500 speeches in 15 different countries. You must be fed up talking about this, Ron.
Well, I've had a lot of fun along the way.
I hope you have. He's the author of 5 books, including Treasure Inside, 23 Unexpected Principles that Activate Greatness, and of course, The Complete Leader, which he co-authored with Randy Linsk. He's a regular contributor to lots of magazines and shows and so on and so forth, and everybody likes to hear what he has to say, so I'm sure everybody here today will be keen to hear you as well. So, Ron, maybe you'd introduce yourself and say a quick hello.
Oh, you mean now you want me to tell the truth after you've given the public relations version of me, huh, Patrick?
Yeah, no, but anyway, no, it's good. It's good to have you here.
Yeah. I am very happy, and just a little bit of jest. The reality is that anytime somebody refers to me as an expert, I sort of flinch, because I think once you think you're an expert, you're in danger of no longer learning new things. And for me, I feel very much the student. As you said, I've had a lot of great opportunities in life. I've actually been involved in different kinds of leadership responsibilities for over 45 years now, and had the opportunity to be in official leadership positions in 10 different companies. But of course, just like you, I'm at this stage in my career where my job is to help other people be successful and to help them grow. So today, I spend most of my time helping the leaders of other organizations think about who they are, where they want to go, and how we can help them get there quicker and better.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, interesting. You and I we've known each other for a few years now. We had an interesting conversation last January, actually, and we realized that we shared a commonality, which is our purpose is to enable people to become all they can be. And if you really want to leverage that, if you really want to influence, clearly working in the arena of leadership is a powerful place to do that. So, yeah, the webinar today, guys, will take about 45 minutes, maybe an hour. There'll be an opportunity at the end to sign up for the seminar that Ron will be delivering on the afternoon of the 8th of May at the RDS Members Club. And in fact, there'll be an opportunity to win some free tickets. So make sure you hang in there and get it at the end. We are currently running one complete leader program in-house for a group of people, and we have 2 more in the pipeline. But we will be running a public program of the complete leader in June, launching it in June. So again, we'll be in communication with anybody who's interested in the fullness of time on that. And maybe at the end, Ron, this seminar that we're running on the 8th, perhaps at the end of this webinar, you might give us 5 minutes on what the seminar will be about, and so that people can get a sense of whether it's not something they might be interested in attending. Okay.
Great. Yep.
As we go forward, again, just for everybody watching, as we go forward, I'm going to be switching back and forth between the video and slides so that you can all get a sense of, if we ask a question, I want you to be able to see it, or if we're talking about a model, I want you to be able to see it. So I'll be switching backwards and forwards, so you just have to bear with me on that. So the first one, I'm going to switch straight away, and I'm going to ask everybody a question. And the question I'm going to ask everybody is a really simple one. And here is, what's your experience? And I'd like everybody, if you'll be good enough in the chat box, I'd like people to tell us, what is your experience? What are some key learning moments around leadership? So what have you learned? Maybe just share a few of those. I'm just looking here as we look. Cronin, Philip, Imelda. Hi, Imelda. Good to have you with us. Marianne, Maura, David, Peter. Hi, Peter. Hey, Philip. Joe. Hi, Joe. Glad you're with us. Shona. Very glad you're with us, Shona. I'm looking forward to talking to you more about this. Barry, Ina, Frank, Paddy. We've got a lot of people on today, a whole list of people. And I don't seem to be able to scroll up and down. So here, so some comments, guys. What is your experience? What are some of the key learning that you've had? By the way, as we go through the webinar, please feel free to post your questions and your comments and get them up there in front of us. So Ron, as people are writing up the comments there and what their key learning is, perhaps I'd ask you the question. We've called this webinar The Complete Leader. And I suppose the question is there any such thing? I feel very incomplete myself. So what do you think? Is there such thing as a complete leader?
Yeah, in fact, Padraig, when Randy and I were writing the book and working with the title, we had a chuckle about calling it The Complete Leader. And in the introduction, we say that, in fact, we don't know if there's any such thing as a complete leader, because leadership's a journey more than it is a destination. Of course, there are different types of leadership. And in the program, we talk about 3 distinct dimensions or types of leadership. One would be positional leadership. That's where somebody else gives you a title or gives you a responsibility. And we think of that as always being on loan, that you never own it completely, that it's something that is entrusted to you for some time. The second kind of leadership that we talk about is expert leadership. That's where people follow you because of what you know or what you can help them get. And then the third type of leadership we refer to as character leadership or intrinsic leadership. And this is where people follow you because they resonate at a deeper level with something about how you live your life or where you're going, the kind of vision that you express with others. So when you ask the question, is there such a thing as a complete leader? I think not, because I think in all three of those dimensions that you're continually adding something. However, upon reflection of it, I think that there may be a sense to which, even though you can't cross the finish line, if the time in your leadership journey comes where you are passing the baton to others, where you know that you're giving what you've learned and you're giving the responsibility that you've carried to somebody else who you know is going to take it further than you, they're going to do better than you, then in a sort of paradoxical way, maybe that's the point at which you could call yourself a complete leader. When you've effectively passed on the baton, knowing that they're going to go further than you have.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. In fact, I can remember having like you, the role changed and the phone stopped ringing. And I realized for the first time that, in fact, the leadership, if you wish, that I had was a role-based leadership. It wasn't a character-based leadership or even an expertise-based leadership. It was a very sobering experience for me. I popped up a slide there that maybe I'd ask you to talk to that slide for a moment. I want to get a little bit specific on what it means to be a complete leader. And in the book, you talk about the 5 key skills. So perhaps you'd maybe walk us through this a little bit and tell us about this and where it came from and so on.
Sure. Well, of course, Padraig, you know that we have 25 leadership skills altogether in the book, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about how those are organized in the future. But one of the things that we've been involved in for quite a few years now is going into an organization and helping them create a unique, customized profile of what will cause a leader to perform at a superior level in a particular position. We call it job benchmarking or job profiling. And in cooperation with TTI Success Insights, of which you and I are colleagues, over the years, there's been a collection of over 10,000 of these unique job benchmarks, which gives us the opportunity to do some macro analysis to identify common themes amongst leaders around the world. And so as we look at these profiles that have all been personalized and yet have common threads, these 5 skills pop up over and over and over again as being skills that are almost universal amongst all leadership roles. There are 3 of them that have to do with how we manage ourselves as a leader, and 2 of them that have to do with how we interact with people. So the first one, personal accountability, is the extent to which we take responsibility for our situation, how we respond to our situation, and how we manage ourselves and the organization going forward. And it's really built on a foundation of being aware. When you ask people the question, what kind of experiences have you had with leadership and leadership development? I think one of the most significant influences in my life has been watching other leaders, both good leaders, or what I would refer to as good leaders, and what I would also refer to as leaders that fell short, leaders that underperformed. And one of the key ingredients that separated those leaders that were high performing from those that were underperforming was how self-aware they were. Did they really understand their impact? Did they understand where their strengths were? Did they understand their weaknesses? Were they transparent about both? Or did they try to cover up? Were they playing more of a status game and trying to act in order to be influential? Or were they being influential out of a place of authenticity? So this is the beginning of developing personal accountability. But another part of personal accountability for me, at least the way that I've defined it in my life, is that I've made a conscious choice not to be a victim. Now, that doesn't mean that I've never been victimized. We've all gone through setbacks. But in my case, what I'm thinking about is that no matter what happens around me, I still have the power to choose how I respond to what happens around me. And so I would say oftentimes I find myself just saying to other leaders, things are never quite as good as you think they are, and they're never quite as bad as you think they are. because in the long run, it's how you respond to those realities that you're facing as a leader that's going to have the biggest impact on your future. And this is one of the ways that we define personal accountability. Next comes self-management, which to me is the ability to organize and execute around your priorities. In other words, to keep making the main thing, or to stay focused on what matters most. And a component of that is the extent to which you're able to control your emotions. And I like to say that great leaders always lead with logic and follow with emotion. You don't ignore emotion. Emotion is very important. I think the leader that is like a Mr. Spock on Star Trek, who's only logic and no emotion, is not really tapping their full potential as a leader. But I also think the leader that lets emotion get in front of logic usually ends up making mistakes. So it's both organizing and executing around priorities, but it's also the ability to manage that relationship between logic and emotion in the way that you lead others. Third in this list of 5 is goal achievement, which obviously is the ability to set and achieve goals. Some of us are good at setting goals, but not so good at crossing the finish line. Others are pretty good at execution, but sometimes we're a little bit too much ready, fire, aim. So goal achievement is the right balance between those, and it's developing a track record so that you have a high degree of confidence and the people around you have a high degree of confidence that when you set a goal, it's real, you mean business, and that 80, 90 or more % of the time, you're going to complete that goal on time, within the allotted budget, with the kind of impact that you had envisioned when you set that goal. So obviously, this is a really important skill to develop as a leader in most leadership positions. Then we have the 2 skills that are around how you interact with others. And the first is interpersonal skills, which is really how effectively you build and nurture and manage your network of relationships. I think the further I go in my leadership journey, the more dependent I am on other people to help me. Maybe we could say it's interdependence. It's that pursuit of the magic of synergy when you truly connect with other people in a collaborative way that's mutually beneficial. It's not just based on your vision or their vision, but it's based on a vision that you share in common and that you're passionate about. And how you build and manage that network of relationships over your career is a really important skill, because over your career, it's going to end up not being 10 or 20 or even 100 people. It could be hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people. And if you learn how to manage those different rings of influence in your network, it has a huge impact on your success long-term as a leader. And then, of course, finally, persuasion or your social skills is an important part of how you leverage the network that you've built. So that's a quick overview of these 5 skills. And we find them popping up over and over and over again when we look at high-performing leaders. And I hope you're still with me.
Yeah, we are. Sorry, lost you for a second there, Ron.
Yeah. I just see a few comments, Mara, talking about a key leadership insight is how you lead in success and in failure. I agree with that 100%. No leader that is trying to pursue their potential is going to succeed all the time. And often what we learn and how we lead and what we teach in the failures is as important or maybe even more important than what happens in the successes. I recently was doing an interview with a journalist, and she asked me, so do you think that leaders have to suffer in order to be good leaders? And I said, I don't think you have to suffer to be a leader, but I do think you have to suffer to be a mature leader. So success and failure are both important parts of it. Yes.
Yeah, there's some interesting feedback here. A couple of comments, I'm going to read them out. Gary, watching people grow is leadership satisfaction. Interesting. Referring back to my chairman, who had that great insight of looking in the mirror and seeing who the enemy was. He always said the greatest satisfaction he ever got in business, in fact, was watching people grow and develop. And I agree with Gary. I think absolutely. The leadership and organisation culture are closely linked, with one being expression of the other, just not always sure which direction. I agree with that 100%. Garmin, asking for feedback, it seems like it might be an admission of uncertainty. but it should be interpreted a way to affirm the actions you made as a leader. I, in fact, just made a comment here. I don't know what you think about this, Ron. I actually like the idea of a vulnerable leader. I like the idea that a leader, I think, in fact, one of the key, if you're a leader, you're modeling. A lot of what you're doing is you're modeling and you're helping people and you're showing them by the way you behave and the way you think and so on and so forth. And being willing to be weak, or being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to acknowledge that you don't know, that you've made mistakes, that you need feedback, that you're learning and growing like everybody else, shouldn't seem to be a sign of weakness, should be seen as a sign of strength.
Yeah, I agree with you, Padraig. And actually, vulnerability as a leader creates two tremendous benefits. The first is it helps the people closest to you recognize that you are self-aware, that you do acknowledge that you have weaknesses, and that you're a human being, and somehow you're not putting yourself above them as some extra iteration or evolution of the human race. And that's an important part of connecting with the people that you're leading. The second reason I think vulnerability is really important is because, and this is one of the big learnings for me over the last couple decades, is that you will never, ever be able to do your best work unless you have people helping you. And in particular, helping you in the areas where you're weak. So acknowledging your weaknesses opens up the door for them to say, I can help. And asking for help makes them feel valued. It helps them to feel noticed. And you're really building this kind of cohesiveness that creates, I think, really true leadership, which is not just to get a job done, but it's the kind of relationships that you build that create results you never would achieve without the strength of those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. Yvonne says here, people work for a leader because they want to rather than because they have to. And of course, that's this character-based leadership you're talking about. Barry, understanding realistic and attainable goals for those involved in the team. Paddy, key leadership thought for me is that other people's expectations of you as a leader are often not your own. And the conflict can be very positive for personal growth. That's sure. I've got personal experience of this recently in the office where, where I'm asking for feedback and I'm getting it. And I don't always like it. But there we go.
In the Complete Leader program, this is one of the pillars that we work on over and over and over again is how do you become really skilled at receiving feedback first? There are very specific skills you can develop to be a champion at receiving feedback. And then having learned how to receive it well, how do you become more and more masterful in how you give it? Because a great leader has to do both. They've got to be great at asking for specific feedback and receiving and processing it properly. And then they also have to become very, very astute at how they give it.
Okay, another question. It'll pop over here. A little question here for people. Bear with me as I just switch over my windows. Here we go. And let me ask you a question. The question is, what's your experience? I'm really interested what people say. What formal training have you had in leadership skills? And I asked this question, again, we'll talk about this, Ron. I asked this question because I realized I'm an MBA, I've got lots of degrees, lots of qualifications, lots of things, and very little training in leadership, like real training in leadership. I've read lots of books for sure. But as you and I both know, Ron, knowing and doing are not the same thing. Do you have any quick comments to make on this?
Yes. Well, actually, I admire people who go and get their MBA or go on to get a PhD in something related to organizational effectiveness. But the reality is that the vast majority of MBA programs are not focused on developing leadership skills. They're focused on developing business acumen. So they're focused on teaching you about finance or operations or marketing or human resources. They're teaching you the structure, the concepts, the theories behind organizational leadership. In contrast, developing leadership skills is more doing than learning. Yes, it's reflecting and it's learning from other thought leaders, but then it's what are you going to do with it? And one of the things that our research has taught us is that you can go to an academic program and not develop leadership skills as a consequence of the program, because most leadership skills are learned through experience. They're learned through projects. They're learned through working through conflicts or working through vision and values and strategy and things like that. So what we believe our role is for leaders is to help them grow as individuals, help them grow in the way they think and what they get accomplished and how they influence others, And they're going to learn the business acumen, a lot of it, in other places. We'll direct them. We'll give them resources to learn the business acumen. But our job is to work with growing them as an individual, not just giving them business acumen.
It's interesting, actually. One comment to make there. There's a little or question in there from Manji saying, is leadership really a one size that fits all, or is it unique to the individual? And of course, it is unique to the individual. The concepts, for sure, are common or generic, but the application of leadership is absolutely unique to every individual. I just popped on here and look at this one here. So if I asked you, Ron, you have a model here. This is your model. What's a complete leader? And you have 4 qualities of a leader. Can I ask you, how did you come up with these qualities? I mean, I like them, by the way. I think they're great. How did you come up with these qualities?
Well, Padraig, first, I think I should say that I don't think that any of our ideas are original. In fact, when I read or when I listen to another leader speak, I feel like you could say I'm renting their information that they're sharing with me, and it goes into my subconscious and it works around there. And it's a combination of several different thought leaders. And one day it pops out as a new recipe. So this model, I don't believe, was something that we can claim complete credit for, but it was the consequence of combining ingredients from several different thought leaders that we were paying attention to. So Randy and I were talking about what we thought a complete leader looked like, and we recognized that there are 3 very clear sets of skills and then 1 clear character question that every leader has to answer in different ways for their specific roles of responsibility. So we came up with the first thing: leaders need to be clear thinkers. If a leader, if you're not clear about where you're going, how can you expect that people are going to follow you with any degree of commitment or clarity themselves? So you have to have a clear idea of where you're going, and you have to be thinking clearly as you move in the direction of that journey. Second thing, leaders need to take care of themselves. They need to lead themselves. And they have to manage themselves well. And we were talking about that in the context of the way that leaders exercise personal accountability and self-management, but it also includes being flexible and being resilient. And then, as we talked about, the ability to move through and achieve goals consistently. The third part of our model was leaders leading others. And of course, because people are fairly complex, leading others can be quite complex as well. And I don't think of it as daunting or scary. I think of it as one of the most exciting parts of being an effective leader. So you see in our model, we have 12 different skills around leaders leading others. And it starts with how well we understand others, and then how we communicate with and interact with them, and then how we move through the complexities, the conflicts, the negotiations, the opportunities that emerge with building strong teams, and then how we develop others and create value for them. So these are the 12 skills that we have around leaders leading others. So these are the 3 different buckets of skills. And then finally, we move to leaders being authentic. And this comes to, first of all, having the courage to be the best version of you. Because the reality is that if you're the best version of you, you're going to stick out. So you have to have a certain amount of courage to do that. And you have to say no to things that you know aren't you, so that you can say yes to the bigger things that are a unique expression of you. And then as you exercise that courage, you have to mix it with humility and transparency and vulnerability, as we talked about, so that you can get help from people. You can be good at receiving feedback. You can acknowledge where your gaps are and where you need other people to come alongside and to help you. And as a consequence of that, you begin to move into what we call the zone, where you can perform at a higher and higher level of your own unique leadership style and capabilities and purpose. And you can think with integrity, you can act with integrity, you can relate with other people with integrity when you've moved into this zone, and then you begin to grow your zone to greater and greater levels. So I guess you could say this is really the core or the soul of leadership, is being authentic. And then how you get it done is through the way that you think, how you manage yourself, and how you lead others.
It's interesting, Ron. I remember seeing a presentation made to Google, a YouTube clip by Goldman, and he was talking about emotional intelligence. And he drew a very interesting scatter graph On the x-axis, he had IQ, and on the y-axis, he had EQ. And he asked what the correlation was. Of course, the answer was there was no correlation, so it's just a scattered graph. But he drew a distribution curve over it. And he said, well, if you slice off a company like Google or any top performing organizations, or if you get to the top of an organization and you slice off the top and say everybody's very smart, the actual space, the differentiator between people at the top based on IQ or experience, is very, very small. But the differentiation, the width on the y-axis for EQ was very, very large. And I think an awful lot, when we talk about leaders are authentic, when we go back to think of self-awareness, self-management, so on and so forth, self-regulation, understanding others and so on, that's really a huge part of leaders being authentic, genuinely understanding themselves and coming to terms with themselves, the good, the bad and the ugly of it. I'm looking here at some answers to our question on leadership development. Cronin said EI Cambridge Leadership Programme. Paddy, most things I've learned about leadership I learned from being led poorly and well. And I think we can all relate to that, Paddy. And reflecting on the difference, off with a coach to pick the right things from the learning. My MA and BA in management only gave me words to use in the search for leadership. I can absolutely relate to that, Paddy. I'm sure you can, Ron. The learning is great. I mean, reading the leadership books, continue learning and listening to others who succeeded and also failed. All the stuff, that's Barry talking there. And Imelda, would like your opinion of to be a good leader, be a good follower. I think you can answer that in a second, Ron, if you'd be good enough. And Dave, company leadership program, both, I won't say his company, Lean Six Sigma, Black Belt and Trend Micro. So I think, so people are getting development. But I mean, get back to Imelda's question there. Would like your opinion of to be a good leader, be a good follower.
Well, I think that, Imelda, first of all, I really appreciate being on the webinar. You know that you're precious to me and you've had a big impact on my life over the years. I think really underneath that question is what is a leader and what is a follower? And although we could come up with a lot of more technical definitions of what a leader is, I think fundamentally a leader is a person of influence. It's a person who impacts our lives. And we do something differently or we view the world differently because of an influence that they've had with us. And again, it could be because of the position that they're in. It could be the expertise that they bring to us. Certainly my tax accountant is a leader to me because I trust his expertise around the way I pay my taxes. So to that extent, he's influencing me. So I think of a leader as a person of influence. So therefore, a follower is a person who is influenceable. And if I'm going to be a good leader, I have to allow myself to be influenced by what other people can teach me. And it really has nothing to do with what their status is or what their position is in the organization. As a matter of fact, as a father, some of the greatest influence I've been I guess you would say some of the greatest influencers in my life have been my children. My children have taught me so much about how to understand that every person's unique, that you can't use the same formula with everybody and get the same result, that you have to learn how to adapt as a leader and you have to have great empathy and understanding of the person that you're leading. So in that way, my children have been a leader to me. And that's happened all through my career. So the way that I think of being a follower versus a leader is by, again, going back to these three dimensions, recognizing that in each of these three dimensions of leadership, in one moment I may be the leader, and the next moment I could be the follower. So positional leadership, I was the president of an international company. And when I met with our customers, when I met with our leadership teams in the 8 different countries where we were conducting business, I was spending much more of my time listening than I was speaking, because I couldn't make good decisions as the leader of that organization without understanding the way our strategies, our products, our services, our plans were impacting them. So to the extent that they were helping me to understand how I could be a better leader, they were actually leading me. They were influencing me. So absolutely, I think that when you really recognize the difference between being a leader and a follower, you recognize that to be good at both, you have to be both.
I think, Ron, you rank with my Irish mammy of 7 for wisdom. You have 6 children and 6 grandchildren, is it?
6 children and 8 grandchildren, and now it's my grandchildren that are teaching me.
Okay, another quick question for the audience out there. What's your experience I'd be interested to know what is working well in your organization around leadership. And we'll talk about what doesn't work in a while, but what's working well. Ron, while people are answering that question, I might ask you, what prompted you to write the Complete Leader book in the program? Why do you think there was a leadership deficit, or why did you feel there was a need for this? There was a lot of stuff out there already.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was resistant to writing a book about leadership for many years because I thought there's so many of them. Why would I need to write another book on leadership? But I began to recognize that a lot of the topics around which I was coaching executives, or Randy Lisk, my co-author, was coaching executives, a lot of the things we were teaching them had not been put into a succinct document that could be referred to over and over and over again. We had a pretty good set of diagnostics to understand where a person's strengths and weaknesses were as a leader, but we didn't have a great encyclopedia of leadership skills that we could go to. So we, even in spite of the fact that there's so many books about leadership, we thought that we could contribute to that conversation by providing a book that was very practical, succinct, and to the point. And it didn't take very long into the process of writing the book that we began to realize we had more material than we were going to be able to get into the book. So we wanted to use the book as a doorway or a gateway into the website, thecompleteleader.org, which we would use as a repository not only for our thinking, but for the thinking of leaders around the world. So it's become a place where we have podcasts and videos and blogs and articles and book recommendations that are coming to us from around the world from people who can contribute valuable insights to this question of the journey of becoming a complete leader.
Yeah, I mean, you have an objective clearly of developing a community. There is this notion of developing a community, this complete leader community, where people sharing practice and resources, and I suppose spreading the word, for want of a better way of putting it.
Yes, that's really what we want to do. And it's part of why I've enjoyed my relationship with you so much, because when we get together, I see the energy, I see the passion that you have to help other people grow. I see your appetite for learning and trying. And so it's people like you that I want to spend the rest of my career working with.
Yeah, well, vice versa. There you go. Okay, some feedback from people on the question I asked, and I'm just going to read them. Shona, building a strong culture based on our values and purpose, something that's working. Dave, high quality internal programs delivered by informed, skilled facilitators supported by selective mentoring. Gary, developing and facilitating an ownership culture where all employees are trusted to empower themselves to make good decisions. Imelda, thank you, Ron and Porry. True pleasure connecting you both as true leaders. Okay, very good. Let me ask everybody a different question. Just going to pop up a slide here for a second, guys. And the question, of course, is the opposite of the question I just asked you. And it is, what's not working? Let me ask you a question. What's not working? Well, we put it more nicely. What's your experience? Do you have any concerns about the future leadership of your organization? And if so, what? Like, what concerns do you have going forward? When you were talking there a moment ago, Ron, you were talking maybe about 10 minutes ago, you were talking about I won't say the failure of existing programs, but you did talk about the fact that existing programs are sort of disconnected. And there is a piece of research out there, I believe, that says that only 7% of leadership development is in fact successful. Perhaps you might talk to that for a moment and talk about what's different about the approach that you're looking at in terms of leadership development.
Great. So we not only do we learn from the cohorts that we work with in the Complete Leader program, and every new cohort we learn something new, but we're also constantly watching the research that's being done around the world. And there are a couple of organizations that have done some really wonderful studies to help us understand the current state of leadership and leadership development around the world. One of those organizations is Deloitte. They put out a new human capital trends report every year, and they make it available for free. And it's usually somewhere around 3,000 organizations in hundreds of countries where the executives and the human resource executives are commenting on what's working and what's not working. And so we really appreciate the work that they do there. Another company that's done some excellent research in this area is McKinsey, and they specifically have looked at why leadership development programs fail. So before I go to that, Padraig, I'd like to just make a couple comments about the unique challenges of leadership at this time in history, because I think part of what we're experiencing, which is really epic, in other words, I mean, it's something that we're going through right now that is unprecedented in history, is that there are a number of major trends that are impacting what leadership needs to be to respond to the challenges and opportunities in front of us. One of those trends is this huge demographic shift that's taking place. Without going into all of the details of it, we have our baby boomers, of which I'm one, that are retiring at a faster and faster clip. And we have the next generation, which are called Gen Xers, born somewhere between 1965 and 1980. And there are not enough of them around the globe to step in and take the roles that are being vacated by baby boomers as they retire. So as a consequence, the millennials, which are born anywhere from 1980 to 2000, depending on what study you read, are moving into leadership positions faster than previous generations did. As a matter of fact, right now in the United States, I haven't seen a global statistic for this, but in the United States, half of all millennials in the workforce are already supervising other people. They're already in leadership positions. Keep in mind, these are people that were born from 1980 to 2000. And those people, their experience growing up around leadership is quite a bit different than what ours was as boomers. For some of us, we grew up in a very agricultural kind of an environment where we really learned that you had to do the little things day in and day out in order to expect a harvest. You couldn't cram on the farm, so to speak. Some of us learned our leadership skills through being involved in the armed forces, serving our country. So we learned discipline and honor and respect and order, all of those things. Some of us learned about leadership through sports and athletics. So it was either playing rugby or playing football or baseball in the United States. And so we learned about leadership through coaches. A very large percentage of millennials that are moving into leadership positions today have not had any of those experiences, agricultural, military, or sports. And a higher and higher percentage of them grew up in single parent families. So their experience with leadership, especially in early childhood learning, which we know has a huge impact on how you behave as an adult, is very different from ours. So that's a major trend. You add to that the globalization factor, where we see that our competitors can come from anywhere around the world, and today we can compete almost anywhere around the world. And then you add the complexity of what's happening with technology and the digital revolution. And you add the changing workforce where more and more people are self-employed and working as contractors on projects instead of lifelong employees in businesses. I guess what I'm trying to say is there are so many moving parts in the world today that the leadership challenge is unique. We can't lead the way that former generations led. We have to rethink our leadership models. And that in and of itself means that we have to rethink leadership development. So that brings me now to why leadership development is not as effective today as it should be. And a McKinsey report that came out in 2014 identified 4 very distinct things that cause us to underperform when it comes to leadership development. The first is a lack of context. And what they mean by that is that we think that one size fits all. We just throw people in to the same leadership development program that we've used in the past. And the reality is it doesn't. We really have to develop. Yes, we have to have foundations. We have to have overall structure of what effective leadership is, like we've done in the 4 buckets, the 4 categories that we talked about earlier of leaders being clear thinkers and managing themselves and leading others and being authentic. But inside of that structure, we have to understand that everybody's challenges and opportunities and threats are going to be somewhat unique, and we have to be able to tailor a program that is specific to their real world on the ground dynamics. So leadership development programs today have to have that flexibility, that they can adapt to the specific circumstances of whoever's going through the program. And I can continue on with the other 3, or if you'd like to comment or...
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you 100%. And I think, interestingly enough, you talk about the 70 2010 approach, adult learning approach to your leadership development. And of course, this is critical. The idea is that people are learning the skills they need and applying them right now in the workplace to challenges that are faced with every day of the week. It's not some intellectual exercise that's taking place out there in space. It's actually happening in the real world. I think that is critical for them, for sure. I think in the McKinsey and in the Deloitte reports, they highlighted these areas. And interesting enough, also, I'll just make one comment. If you look at the way organizations are being managed, the whole hierarchical structure, for all intents and purposes, gone. People just won't wash it and won't wear it anymore. And organizations require people to self-manage. They require them, even at the lowest levels, to take ownership, take responsibility for themselves, for what they're doing, for the goals and objectives, to self-manage, to influence others, and so on and so forth. And to do all those things at all sorts of levels, and leads teams through where they don't have any position authority, for example, they have to lead teams. So there's huge demands, other type of leadership demands, I think, right across the workforce. Just some comments here coming in from people. More a shortened business cycle, fear ROI is the only measure of success. These were the answers to our questions. What are the challenges? Add all of these moving parts and speed, the speed of change. Absolutely, Paddy. Crone, not working in the past. We had too many junior people in our team, too inexperienced to really lead. Leadership takes a team. We could have a big long conversation about that and what it means, leadership in a team. Gary, building a culture around reducing organizational complexity is a very complex organization. That's a challenge for sure. Sean, in order to drive the future of the business and the growth strategy, leadership skills across our business need to be developed at a faster pace to keep up. This is all just saying what you're saying. Working cohort groups and coaching to get feedback from Cronin, Marianne, hesitance of technical guys to move into leadership roles for sure. Why? Because they don't know how to. They've no experience of it. Dave, senior leadership definitely not living the values, being promoted. Now, that's really interesting, getting back to this thing of being an authentic leader. It's really all about living the values. You have to walk the talk. And Garvin, a real empathy, connecting with the team as individuals, trying to understand their perspectives, is creating an environment with increased stability and comfort. And added bonus is the potential conflicts can be averted due to mutual understanding, for sure. Sean, building a strong culture based on our values and purpose. Dave, high quality internal programs to survive. So, I mean, it's interesting when you look at this, they're all addressing the same issues. And what I really like, and the reason that you and I are launching this program in Ireland, what I really like about the Complete Leader program, and I believe the differentiator, the real value proposition here, is that unlike other programs, and don't misunderstand, I'm not in any way disparaging other programs. There's excellent programs out there, lots of them, but this is a practical program. It's a program that's a structure, it's a practical program, but that allows you to develop yourself uniquely. There are core things that have to be developed, their strengths have to be developed, their weaknesses have to be developed, but you can identify what they are in those 25 copies that form up those buckets. And then within that context, you can develop yourself practically using practical learning, projects in your current role, feedback that you're giving, feedback that you're receiving, and only 10% in the classroom, which I think is really, really important. I just want to move on just really, really quickly, and I want you, just because we're running out of time here, I want you, Rob, perhaps to tell me a little bit about the seminar that we are proposing to run on the 8th of May. There we go. We have a pair of tickets worth. In fact, we're giving 5 of these out to 5 people. A pair of tickets to this seminar called The Complete Leader on the 8th of May in the RDS from 2 to 5 p.m. You might give us just maybe a couple of minutes on it and what the seminar will be about.
Great, sure, be happy to. So we're going to continue this conversation around the 4 reasons why leadership development programs fail. And then we're going to take a deeper look at what the leadership development program, the Complete Leader program looks like, and how we move through the different phases of it and the different methodologies that we use so that we touch everybody at the level of most effective learning for them. So we'll go through a few of the exercises that we do in the program. We'll give you the opportunity to look at a lot of the curriculum, the resources that we tap into. And I hope that as a result of getting together, we're going to have a very interactive conversation, because everywhere I go, I learn just as much as I get to share with other people. So I'm expecting the people attending the seminar are going to be thought leaders contributing to the conversation as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. I remember the first time a couple of years ago that you and I talked about this program, and we talked about have to be and be to have, and it's sort of become a mantra of mine since. Where so I would always say that I want to develop my empathetic skills, and that would be one of my weaker areas. And I know the program isn't just about developing weaknesses and becoming mediocre, strong, dying with a lot of strong weaknesses. It's about building on your strengths. Having said that, I took this notion on board, and you said something to me that really struck me, and then I read it in the book, that to become an empathetic leader, what you have to do is you have to decide that you want to be. And I think this deciding, it's interesting. I often ask the question, why don't people change? And then I ask the question of myself. And the conclusion I came to was, I don't want to. I want the world to change. I want everybody to adapt to me, but I don't want to change. And fundamentally, I think one of the key issues for a real leader is a genuine desire to change, to develop, to grow, to become all they can be. So the first thing you have to do is decide that you want to be whatever. So in my case, be an empathetic leader. And then, of course, you have to do the things, as you say, that empathetic leaders do. And the argument that you would make is then I will have an empathetic outlook. So I like this be, do, have. And, of course, the whole core of this program is the 70-20-10. That's all about you learn a thing, you go out and practice that's unique to you, you get feedback, you work it over a period of 5-6 weeks, you come back in. And you learn and develop that way, the way adults actually learn. And then the learning is connected to where you are, to who you are, to the context that you're in, to the challenges that you're faced with, and so on. So I hope that everybody has entered the draw, and we'll be communicating with the winners by email to let them know. And for any of you out there who are listening into this, we're very, very keen to develop these programs, both internally in organizations and, of course, our public programs. As I said earlier, we are running one already. We have 2 more in the pipeline, and we are launching our public program in June. So if this is something you think is of interest to you, make sure that you're coming along to our seminar, where you have a real opportunity to meet Ron in the flesh, to talk to Ron and myself and the team, and to get a better insight into the program. Ron, just before you go, any closing words of wisdom for us and for our attendees?
I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this conversation with you today, and really appreciate all of the comments people have been sending in through the chat window. And I look forward to meeting you in person. I really hope that you'll all plan to attend the seminar on May 8th. It'd be wonderful to be able to spend some time together and maybe even lift a pint together.
Okay, my just closing comment, Ron, you can jump in here if you want. I believe that leadership is, without doubt, people are born leaders. They exist. We've all met them. They were leaders when they were 1, or 2 years of age. But the vast majority of leaders learn to become leaders. I think this is really, really important. Leadership is something you learn. You can become a world-class leader, and you learn it by identifying the specific areas you want to develop and then practice. And we say practice makes permanent. So right practice makes perfect. And identifying the areas you want to work on, using feedback and practical application in the workplace through assignments, whatever, as a tool is a really powerful way to genuinely not learn about leadership, not write a book about leadership, not read a book about leadership, not write an article about leadership, actually become a complete leader, or certainly a more complete leader. So thank you to everybody who's attended the webinar today. We look forward to seeing you at the seminar. And I really want to thank you, Ron, for, I know it's early over there in Idaho, so I really thank you for coming on early in the morning for this webinar, and look forward to seeing you on the 8th of May here in Dublin. So thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye, Ron.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you very much.